So this evening, we all gathered and lit our Hanukkah candles and lit our Shabbat candles. And tomorrow night, we'll gather and we'll light our Hanukkah candles and we'll do Havdalah and light the Havdalah candle. You would think that that would be relatively simple and straightforward, but if you've not been paying attention, our sages do not like when things are overly simple or straightforward. So there's discussion in the Gemara as to whether when lighting Shabbat candles on Friday evening and Hanukkah candles, which one should you light first? And on one hand, they apply a principle, two principles. One is tadir v'sheino tadir kodem, which means that the more routine, the more frequently done the mitzvah, the task at hand, the more frequently, regularly it's done, that one takes precedence. Therefore, by that logic, one should light the Shabbat candles first and the Hanukkah candles afterwards. The problem, however, is the sages, in a different discussion, were pretty clear that the act of lighting Shabbat candles and saying the blessing means that we have begun Shabbat, which means you are now no longer able to flame on and light your Hanukkah candles. So the principle in that case is reversed. Fast forward now to Saturday night, and you're ready to end Shabbat, and so you have your Havdalah candle, and you have your Chanukiah with its array of candles, and based on the principle that I just suggested, which one should you do first? Tadir v'sheino tadir. You would think Havdalah. And if you happen to be a follower of the Taz, who was a sage who lived in Poland in the 17th century, you would be in agreement with him. Or he would be in agreement with you, depending on how you choose to look at it. But he's not the only voice on the subject. The Vilna Gaon, who lives about a century later, not exactly a slouch in his own right, says Dafka the reverse, that you should light the Hanukkah candles first, and then later the Havdalah candles, the Havdalah candle. And so he asks, so we're left the question of, but what about the principle of, all right? And he says, well, yes, but you have to incorporate the fact that there's a second principle called the Tosefet Shabbat, the idea that we want to prolong the sanctity of Shabbat because Shabbat is awesome, and we don't want to sort of usher it out the door quickly. We want to kind of keep it around a little bit longer, and so people will often do various things to stretch Shabbat. They'll sing over Sudah Shlishit. I have to say, one of the things that was always particularly nice in my last congregation was that on Shabbat afternoon, we would do mincha, and then we have Sudah Shlishit, and we would sing and we would study, and nobody ever looked at their watch. Which, when I first got there, I'm going like, okay, I'm watching my watch because I'm going like, okay, they're going to want me to be on time, and no, just like we're singing, we're enjoying the moment, we're enjoying being together, we're enjoying the conclusion of Shabbat, and we're not in a hurry to get rid of it. So it was really this incredible embodiment of Tosefet Shabbat about letting Shabbat linger. And so the Taz suggested that one should light the Havdalah candle first, based on his principle of more regular. Even if you're adding to Shabbat, still end that way. And the Gaon of Vilna says, no, Shabbat is so wondrous and so magnificent that, light the Hanukkah candles first. You're stretching Shabbat for just those few extra minutes. Now, there's, I think, a little bit more buried here. And I think part of what these competing halachic principles reveal is this broader idea of how do we balance regular obligations, ongoing obligations, with extraordinary opportunities for sanctity. Lighting the Chanukiah and with all of its festiveness and joy and celebration is a unique moment in the calendar. And you would think that that would get priority. And one of my colleagues, Rabbi Harold Kushner, now of blessed memory, I think captured the essential problem. And that is, what is it that the Hanukkah candles celebrate? What are we doing when we light them? We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. It's about Pirsume Nisa. We're promulgating, we're announcing the miraculous events of the Hanukkah story. The victory of the Maccabees, the miracle of the oil. All right? That's the purpose of those Hanukkah lights, to talk about divine intervention, to talk about the miraculous. Whereas, if you light candles every Friday night, if you do Havdalah every Friday night, it's routine. It's part of the regimen of life. And so Rabbi Kushner says, and I quote, "No matter how impressive a miracle might be, it does not solve the problem of faith for more than a day or two, any more than the finest meal solves the problem of being hungry for very long." And he doesn't point to it, but I will, which is, if you pay attention as we read the Torah year after year, our Israelite ancestors are the epitome of this. Right? Think about it. Right? The Israelites, we haven't read this yet, but I don't think this is a spoiler. If it is, I apologize. Right? The Israelites are trapped in Egypt in servitude for centuries. Moses comes along and he performs, or he is the trigger for God performing miracle after miracle on behalf of the Israelites. One plague and another plague and another, and then 10 plagues. And the Egyptians finally relent and the Israelites leave, and they decide, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. They go chasing after the Israelites, and God parts the Sea of Reeds, and the Israelites pass through, and the Egyptians are drowned in the sea. More miracles. Right? The people are hungry. Manna falls. The people need water, and poof, the waters that were bitter at Marah are sweetened. There's a miraculous well that follows them around so that they have water all the time. Surrounded by miracle. And how do the Israelites react? What have you done for me lately, God? Even the miracles become kind of banal and ordinary. Because the Israelites are themselves not investing in building routine faith experiences. These miraculous events, as amazing as they are, as powerful as they are, do not seem to solve the problem of faith for the Israelites. And the same can be seen in the generations after the Maccabees, and even for us. We sometimes don't internalize the miraculous, and that is why it seems to me a few small experiences of meaningfulness of every day will do more for the soul than a single overwhelming miraculous one. And that is perhaps also why the rabbis break with that principle of tadir v'she'no tadir. Yes, Hanukkah is something we anticipate and we celebrate, but if we really want to have a deeply rooted faith, we need to develop the regimens of Jewish life, which are the lighting of Shabbat candles to mark the onset of Shabbat, doing Havdalah and lighting the Havdalah candle at the end. And only then, when those spaces are carved out, on either side of them, can we celebrate the miraculous, because we've created fertile ground in our hearts and our souls for engaging with God's sanctity. Amen. Averim, let me invite you to turn back to our Sidurim.